Good morning, I hope everyone's well today. Thank you for watching, it is appreciated as always. I think it's clear at this point that Jess Phillips needs to resign as Safeguarding Minister, and if she had any integrity she would resign as an MP. As always, this is just my opinion, your mileage may vary on that point. The grooming gang inquiry that's been rolled out is not going well at all. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to the reports today. First thing I want to say is that the Grooming gang inquiry is facing collapse. Thanks for Basil the Great for pointing this out. One of the two potential chairs has withdrawn this morning after extensive criticism of the handling of the inquiry. It's a stitch-up and everybody knows it in his view. The victims are withdrawing, the chairs are withdrawing, nobody wants their part in this cover-up. That's a safe assumption. We've had 3 victims that resigned earlier on today, followed by a 4th this evening. The 3 victims are, they put their names out, so I don't mind releasing it because they've already put it out, Elizabeth Harper, Eliane Reynolds and Fiona Goddard. There is a 4th that remains anonymous, and that's the way that they want it. It should be on their terms, nobody else's. The grooming gang, the mass exploitation of predominantly white British girls, although boys were impacted. I've said it before, I'll continue to say it. It's one of the greatest atrocities after mass migration inflicted on the population by the government, and they covered it up. My personal view is not that the state didn't know, it's they did know, and they couldn't care less because they were white working class people. And the working class people, as we know time and time again, were far-right racists, bigots, thugs. That's what the establishment think of me, you and our children. And it's unacceptable, and that's what I'm calling out here. We very much have a class issue in the United Kingdom, and this grooming gang scandal, which is all over Britain. It's not exclusively the north of England, it's all over Britain, is a direct result of this. Let me move on to the next point that I want to make, which is from the Stark Naked Brief. An image will come up on the screen in a moment, okay? This is Saba Kaiser. She's one of the advisors the Labour have appointed to the new National Grooming Gang Inquiry Panel, and a survivor of CSA herself. It has now emerged that Kaiser had previously downplayed the disproportionate role of Pakistani and Muslim men in grooming gangs across this United Kingdom. She's on the record saying that claims that most crimes are committed by Asian men is destructive, distracting and irresponsible and not based on evidence. In reality, in the government's own audit led by Baroness Casey found the opposite. Let me continue. Kaiser grew up in a Pakistani Muslim household. Some of her abusers were relatives on her mother's side who emigrated from Pakistan to the United Kingdom. In one account, she described being raped on a kitchen table while an older woman stood guard so younger children would not interrupt. She eventually told her mother what happened. She was told to unalive herself. In other words, yet another survivor of Pakistani Muslim child sex abuse, SA, who's arguably minimised the very cases that were committed predominantly by her own ethnic group. This is the issue, and I don't know if this is a race thing or a religion thing. If people that I knew were committing this sort of crime that were of my demographic, i.e. white and British and male, the first thing I'd be doing is disowning them and going to the police, and nothing would stop me from doing that. In certain communities, that doesn't seem to be the case, that they hold either their race or their religion as paramount above anything else. That's what we've imported to the country, and that's what we need to have an honest conversation about. What type of country do we want to live in? This is unacceptable, and no one in their right thinking mind would think it was acceptable. Let me move on to this. This is from a survivor of the grooming gangs, and this is Fiona Goddard, who I mentioned earlier in the video. This is in response to Jess Phillips in Parliament actually calling her a liar, in her words, alright? That's the accusation that's been made. Shortly after I was added to the panel, I got an email saying that we were going to be consulted on the terms of reference, and one of the questions on the agenda was, should the inquiry have an explicit focus on grooming gangs or group-based CSEA, or take a broader approach? It is a blatant lie for Jess Phillips to suggest, as she has done in her letter, it is untrue that had been possibly a conversation around expanding the scope of the grooming gangs beyond the grooming gangs. Jess Phillips also denies that the government has sought to take a regional approach to investigations. This is also a lie. In a meeting with the Mayor of the West of Yorkshire mentioned earlier, Alison Lowe, the Deputy Mayor, said she did not now want a review in West Yorkshire, and Bradford is in West Yorkshire. Though she changed her position, no truly national review would entertain the idea of having areas opt out of investigation, especially in areas like Bradford, which is one of the worst impacted areas and least investigated. So we'll leave that there. We have a Member of Parliament not wanting to believe the victims, or either flat out lying or misrepresenting the information. This is unacceptable. This should be a resigning matter, both as an MP, and I think we can throw in the dustbin that she is actually a feminist at this point. This is the first clip that I want to play. Alright?
Viewers and listeners, what she accused you of specifically, please, Fiona?
So in my resignation letter, I made public about the attempts to widen the scope and also how the inquiry would be conducted, extending it from localities to regions. She said that them claims were categorically untrue, even though she was aware of them because of personal text I sent to her outlining what we were being asked, and her response back to me was that she knew that the question was being asked and that she couldn't make the decision without it being consulted on. So she called me a liar while she knew the truth.
And you then took to social media today, and I think we're witnessing a little bit of that on the screen now. You then published actually an email and what appeared to me to be a phone message or something like that anyway, of you communicating directly with her about that. So you basically, well, I mean, I don't want to use the word liar on this show for various different legal reasons, but I mean, it would appear that she was not being entirely honest.
Yes, no, she was not. And I think it's quite concerning that she would rather try and damage the character of a survivor than take some responsibility herself. I do think Jess Phillips needs to resign. I think the only logical move forward from this point is her resignation. How can she represent women and children's best interests if she would rather try and discredit a survivor, knowing that survivor's being truthful, than take some responsibility herself?
I completely agree. Now, this lady is the one whose letter I was reading out before. This is Fiona Goddard. She's one of the survivors of the grooming gangs. Where are the Me Too women now? Where are the people that said we need to believe all women under any circumstances? Or is it only certain women that need to be believed, i.e. women that are of a certain social standing, shall we say? This is disgusting. I've got no reason to disbelieve what Fiona is saying. I have every reason to disbelieve what the Labour government is saying. That's the reality of the situation that we're in. Jess Phillips was looking haggard and visibly deranged in the Houses of Parliament today. I want to play a couple of clips. By anyone's standards, she's not a well woman, and she does need to go.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cover-up continues. We have a Prime Minister who never wanted a national inquiry. We have a Minister who never wanted a national inquiry. And we have the Labour backbenchers who never wanted a national inquiry. So does the Minister agree with me that the victims of these horrific crimes will never get the justice they deserve as long as we have a Labour government in charge? Minister.
It's quite impressive that you would stand up and say that after a grooming victim stood up and spoke on these benches, but you know, I've learned to expect it. When the Honourable Gentleman stands up and talks about cover-up, I understand that or maybe he's doing it for clicks, I don't know, but I understand that he thinks he's doing, you know, God's work in fighting this. the level of bad faith, the idea that it's easy to find a chair or easy to find people who want to step forward and take part in this process when it is mired in, I have to say, political point scoring.
I'm going to pause that there when she says bad faith, political point scoring, and finding people that want to get involved. It's because it is political and it's deeply damaging for Labour. Most of the areas were Labour-held areas up in the north. That is the reality. Not exclusively, but predominantly. Like, it's not all Pakistani Muslim men that are the problem, but the demographic and the facts paint a picture. They are disproportionately overrepresented, just like the areas where these grooming gangs operated were disproportionately overrepresented being Labour-run areas. Alright? So when she says, we want to make it political, it's not political. What are you doing? Everything is political. Alright? You're not fit to be in office if you don't actually understand this basic fact. Everything is political. Alright? And the fact that you're trying to weasel out of it, in my view, I remember you was on Question Time conflating the mass assaults on women on mainland continental Europe a few years ago as, oh, it's just what happens in Birmingham on a Friday night. Well, maybe in your constituency in Birmingham on a Friday night, we know your demographic in Birmingham, the vote that you're going to lose at the next election, maybe that's representative of your voters. Bit of a self-report on your own area, I would say. But yeah, this is very much a political issue, because time and time again, I've said the establishment, the country, the rulers of our country, think that me and you don't matter because we're working class. Alright? And that's why the grooming gangs were covered up. They're still happening to this day, because the state thinks that we don't matter. So it is political. And Labour was always meant to be for the working people. You're not. You're for your own back pocket, and you're to keep yourselves in power, just like them all. Alright, so you get no credit. And it is very much political, and Reform are coming for you, and if not Reform, UKIP, and if not UKIP, Advance UK. You're done. You're done. Your name is mud.
Like he just did. I have to say, I think that he should really question his own morality.
Question your own morality, sweetheart, that's what I would say. And yes, I did say sweetheart. Sue me. Anyway, it gets worse. She got even more animated later in the day.
With Oldham is, do we not think it might be better for them just to take part in a statutory inquiry? That it is absolutely nothing to do with the idea that Oldham is telling me what to do. And the more people from that side, we can hold up his paper and have a smug face all he likes, but the fact of the matter is that there is absolutely no council in this country who will tell this inquiry where it can and cannot go. I have said that 1,000,000 times from this dispatch box.
I don't believe that for 1 second. 1,000,000 times? No. You're misleading the house there.
And yet the same thing gets peddled again and again.
Well, she's getting rather emotional. And yes, she is getting emotional, and I will stick to that. She doesn't know a brief, or she does know a brief, and she doesn't want to look under the carpet to see what's being swept under that. She's got to go. Now, we look at Grok, an AI tool on Twitter. They analysed her performance in the House of Commons today. Let's see what Grok says. Jess Phillips displays classic signs of distress: fidgeting, elevated speech, pace, and evasive responses, suggesting a heightened anxiety and perceived threats to her position. Her mental state appears to be defensive and compartmentalised, prioritising narrative control over factual accountability, which often signals underlying guilt or fear of repercussions. This panic mode reveals vulnerability as composure crumbles under scrutiny. So, she needs to go. She's not fit to be an MP, she's not fit to be a politician, she's not fit to be anywhere near power, and she's not fit to represent anybody who would be considered vulnerable in this United Kingdom. I have no faith in Labour, and I have no faith that they'll ever get to the bottom of it, because essentially they're marking their own homework. The entire establishment of all stripes, Labour, Tories and Lib Dems, they're all accountable and they all need to go. Like the post office scandal all over again with Ed Davey, when he just swatted it away, not interested, when he was in the coalition with David Cameron and Nick Clegg. Didn't want to know about it. Alright? Always remember who you're dealing with here. Alright? We deserve people that represent our interests and actually get to the bottom of this. It's absolutely outrageous, and it is very, very upsetting. It's still going on since the 1970s, right up to this second, and it needs to end. I would appoint Maggie Oliver to get to the bottom of it if I was in charge. She's impartial. She lost one of her jobs as a special constable in Manchester. I would trust her to get to the bottom of it. I really would. She's a diamond. If anyone deserves a damehood, it's that lady. As always, these are just my thoughts. You may think that I'm being harsh on Jess Phillips. You may think I'm being too kind. As always, let me know. Comment below. Hit that like and subscribe. And thank you for your patience.